नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदयान्तस्थो न भद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवतसेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32, verse 19, 20 and 29. 21, sorry. Verse 19. Nunam daivena vihata ye chachuta katha sudham hitva shanvanti asakatha purisham eva vidbhuja. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. Purport. Everyone is addicted to hearing of the activities of another person, whether a politician or a rich man or an imaginary character whose activities are created in a novel. There are so many nonsensical literatures, stories, and books of speculative philosophy. Materialistic persons are very interested in reading such literature, but when they are presented with genuine books of knowledge like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Puran, or other scriptures of the world, such as the Bible and Quran, they are not interested. These persons are condemned by the Supreme Order as much as a hog is condemned. The hog is interested in eating stool. If the hog is offered some nice preparation made of condensed milk or ghee, he won't like it. He would prefer obnoxious, bad-smelling stool, which he finds very relishable. Materialistic persons are considered condemned because they are interested in hellish activities and not in transcendental activities. The message of the Lord's activities is nectar, and besides that message, any information in which we may be interested is actually hellish. Next 20. Dakshinena patharyam na pitralokam brajanti te prajam anu prajayante smashananta kriya krita. Translation. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitraloka by the southern poles of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verse 21, it is stated that such persons are elevated to the higher planetary systems. As soon as their lifetimes of fruitive activity are finished, they return to this planet, and thus they go up and come down. Those who are elevated to the higher planets again come back into the same family, for which they had too much attachment. They are born and the fruitive activities continue again until the end of life. There are different prescribed rituals from birth until the end of life, and they are very much attached to such activities. Text 21. Tataste kshina sukrata punarlokam imam sati patanti divasha devai Satyo Vipramsito Daya. Translation. When the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down by higher arrangement and again come back to this planet, just as an Just as any person raised to a high position sometimes all of a sudden falls. Purport. It is sometimes found that a person elevated to a very high position in government service falls down all of a sudden, and no one can check him. Similarly, after finishing their period of enjoyment, foolish persons who are very much interested in being elevated to the position of president in higher planets also fall down to this planet. The distinction between the elevated position of a devotee and that of an ordinary person attracted to fruitive activities is that when a devotee is elevated to the spiritual kingdom, he never falls down, whereas an ordinary person falls, even if he is elevated to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka, that even if one is elevated to a higher planet, he has to come down again. But Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita 8.16, Mam upetya tu kaunteya punarjanma na vidyate. Anyone who attains my abode never comes back to this conditioned life of material existence. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I humbly bow down and seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself, and please forgive me for any shortcomings. I have taken notes from a lecture by His Holiness Romapat Swami Maharaj. In previous few verses, we went through the understanding of how the greatest of the yogis and even the secondary creator Brahma sometimes has to come back to this material world if they are devoid of bhakti. When there is a misconception of separateness, there is doership. Because of that misconception of doership, there is entanglement in fruitive activities, and for which there are consequences. In these verses, Kapila Dev is describing this idea of seeing separateness and the actions of the modes of nature, religious activities that are fruitive in intention, and the demigod worshippers. What happens when there is this separate conception of I am the doer in the mode of passion, fruitive activities and consequences? All this is described in these verses. The message of the Bhagavatam is very clear. Those who are strictly and faithfully following other codes of the Vedas, but without devotion to Supreme Lord, they cannot be elevated to the spiritual world. Whatever the process is, if it doesn't result in the attraction to the message of Vasudeva Katha, it is a waste of time. Srimad Bhagavatam dismisses it. Here in the purport, Prabhupada has referred to some verses of Bhagavad Gita. The message of Srimad Bhagavatam is the gradual study of Bhagavad Gita explaining in an expanded way the perils of fruitive activity. The subtlety of those perils is presented here. Kapila Dev's teachings here elevates in a different way the appreciation of how much Prabhupada wanted Srimad Bhagavatam to be popularized, because the narrations are certainly fascinating. But because Krishna is in the center, they are elevating in addition to fascinating. But materialistic persons are interested in reading or listening to imaginary dramas or novels instead of Krishna Katha. Knowing very well what Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita is saying, because of their conceptions or ego, people are not interested in the Bhagavatam. Here the scene is Kapila Dev is speaking to his mother Devhuti and he is exhaustively giving answers. How do we get out of Maya? How do we become free from attachments to worldly existence? Application is in two areas, personal and interpersonal. Personal is how do we apply the practice of Krishna consciousness to ourselves within our own life. And interpersonal is how do we extend the message of Krishna consciousness to others. In terms of our own lives, regularly hearing about pastimes of Krishna, chanting his name, not being neglectful and casual, because we are in the material atmosphere which is very strong on the weak conditioned souls. So not only applying the process regularly, but also keeping our attention on what the essence of that process is, restoring the right conception of the supreme and goal of that relationship. Now for interpersonal. People have different ideas out there, and in principle, we should be clear what element must be there for something to be effective. And while honoring everyone's right, amplify the essence without making judgments of what they are doing. Somehow help the other person to understand of what Kapila Dev is explaining, especially about the perils of fruitive activities. Just as Kapila Dev is describing, the materialistic persons don't want the personality of Godhead. They don't want liberation. They want to feel good and they are not interested beyond that. So what can we do to make them interested in Krishna consciousness? Sometimes we can approach directly and sometimes indirectly. For example, when we continue to have kirtan or distribute prasadam, lot of people would like that. But then, when we talk about Krishna, their opinions differ based on religion or philosophy or even atheism. Topics of Krishna is too abstract for them. But if you take out Krishna, then what are they working for? Sense gratification. We can ask, why are they working so many hours? To accomplish what? It's for pride, satisfaction, the position and honor, money. That all is sense gratification. Now, what does working for Krishna look like? For somebody who is working for Krishna, the quality of consciousness is different. The speech, manner, the mode of expression, the satisfaction within is different. The satisfaction comes only when one works for Krishna. The other one working for sense gratification is not satisfied. Whatever approach we take, some people will be attracted, some people will not be attracted, and some will be repelled. The efficacy of Kapila Dev is, by devotional service, take direct shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart. So that's the practical application. The adjustments is in consciousness. How do we regard the personality of Godhead and elevate our attention towards Him? That's what is important in the process of bhakti. Because once we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet and worship Him with devotion and love, then we can be situated in transcendental devotional service. I'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo